Hey yo, what it div, y'all? Let's get right into it. So, I wanted to take this time today to talk about questions that I've gotten after the Sanctum guide. It's been about a week since I've made that video, and there are a lot of things that I couldn't talk about in it for the desire to not make that video too long. Right, that was a 50-minute video. Thank you guys so much for watching that. By the way, you guys are absolutely wonderful. And even if you haven't watched it, I do actually recommend watching it if you want more full details on things about the Sanctum. But in this video, there are a lot of questions that I've gotten in my comments, on my stream, in Discord, that I feel like I should just go ahead and answer here to better inform everyone in a format that is not constrained by the fact that I wanted to keep that video from being an hour long. Didn't even really want it to be 50 minutes long, but there's just a lot of information we're talking about the Sanctum. It's why it's a hard mechanic to get into, also very rewarding mechanic, has a lot of room for min-maxing, and so I want to talk about some of those details here. Although these details are actually going to be a little bit more focused on the early side of Sanctum, or not necessarily early, but like questions for getting started and things of that nature. All right, before I get into it, of course, I mentioned all the places to contact me. Those are in the description, as well as, if you like this video, find it particularly helpful, like, comment, subscribe, maybe put the notifications on. It, helps you see more of what I post, but also really it just gets the video to more people. There's indubitably people who want to know these things beside you, and it always helps, get that out there, because that's the primary goal of this channel, right? Now, let's start with what I think the question I got the most is, which is how much damage do I need in order to start doing Sanctums? And this is a tough question to answer because my understanding of this is a little different than yours, quite frankly, right? I feel like if you have to ask this question, you are not a proficient or prolific Sanctum runner. You are most likely getting started and you're a little bit nervous about wasting tomes. And so my recommendation for people who are a little bit more worried is that if you're trying to run 81 plus tomes, which are the tomes that run, 83 Lycia, therefore she drops potential original sin drops and whatnot, I would be aiming for 15 to 20 million DPS on your character, especially if you're in trade. There's actually not a lot of reason not to aim for that much damage at the very minimum, because it's so easy to get your character up there while forsaking defenses, right? Usually the struggle of getting your damage number that high is that you are trying to keep it mapping safe. And while you can keep it functional for most maps, you're not trying to do juice T17s on this character. Your goal is to do Sanctum. And so you can put a little bit more effort into damage. You can do things like unreserving your grace to fit in zealotry, for example, to really like lean in. The minimum for 81 plus that I find is that 8 to 10 million is extremely comfortable for me. That has a lot to do with the fact that I am very comfortable in the Sanctum, including I do not struggle with the Blood Maze in the Lycia fight. I know how to dodge the third boss's patterns. I'm very comfortable like working around guards while dodging traps. These are like player comfort things. That number gets lower and lower as you become more comfortable in the Sanctum. But that again, that's the starting point. If your damage is not quite that high yet, and you just want to try, or maybe you're an SSF and you need to get yourself your Sandstorm Visage for the first time, for example, you can technically run them pretty comfortably in the mid 70s on about 5 to 10 million DPS. Again, lean on the higher side of that threshold if you are not particularly comfortable with the mechanic, and on the lower side, like 4 to 5 million is what I had last league when I played Hexblast and got my own Sandstorm Visage. I believe that's about where I was at. Okay, next up, why is your character semi-functional? Right? I've gotten a lot of questions about, the fact that I run a shield still instead of running double wand, for example, this is a common thread across characters for me, or the fact that I opt to keep my reses capped and things like that. And so this is going to serve as a great balance point for me to just talk about defensiveness in the Sanctum, because it's not that you need defenses in the Sanctum. Let me make that very clear, right? The point of the Sanctum and the way that you farm it and the way that you get really good at it is by not taking hits or damage at all, really. Maybe you take a couple incidental hits here and there, but for the most part, you're playing like a roguelite. You're aiming to not lose resolve at all. Maybe even practicing for those elusive no-hit runs. And when you're at that stage, taking damage is out of the picture, and you therefore don't actually need your defenses. But when you're just kind of fucking around and running Sanctum, it is very annoying and an absolute killjoy to brick a Sanctum, especially a potentially good one. Let's say you've got one with 4 Divines queued up. You've only got a couple more rooms to go. Suddenly you get tickled by the artillery hail from the Frost Archer guard in there, and you die. Like your character outright dies. Your resolve and inspiration are fantastic, but you outright die. Now you've lost the run. And that is a tilt. That is an absolute tilter for me. So I keep my characters able to survive incidental damage, specifically to avoid being tilted. That's a personal thing for you. You need to figure out if you're tilted by things like that, which, given the community's general lean towards defensiveness in mapping, we've come a long way since the days of acro phase acro, or your only defenses in mapping, cope if you take damage. We've come a long way since then. And I think you should still be able to apply that mentality to Sanctum, because you don't need those excessive 300, 500, 800 million DPS characters to farm Sanctum, when in reality, at that point in your damage, you are well beyond overkill anyways, and you're mostly doing it just because the number looks bigger, which if you like the number, hey, look, go for the number. But for me personally, I like not incidentally breaking Sanctums, because there are a couple guards, especially again in that mid progression range, right? If you're talking about a 15 to 30 million DPS character, or a not super range invested character, say like Penance brand with insane brand attachment range, you are at risk of taking incidental damage, and having this little bit of defense is the way to do it. Number 3, are there good alternative suffixes for the merchant strat? Because I did talk about the reduced cost percentage suffix on those tomes, and those are really expensive, right? And I want to take this time. I believe I did cover it in the video, but I just want to highlight it again here. There's the other major suffix, and the one that I use personally, as I had a conversation in the comments with somebody about it, is that I run coins per room. Coins per room are extremely strong. Each one of those, assume you get a 10 coins per room roll on each of your choices things. If you have one of those over the course of a Sanctum, that is 320 coins. Now, obviously, a couple of those coins are completely pointless, as to the fact that they're too late in the run to actually do anything for you. But each one is giving you about a relic or two, or about a boon or two worth of coins, which adds up pretty quickly over the course of a run. So that is absolutely what I would recommend as your flex suffix for that strategy. Should you want to lean harder, you've got a bunch of +2s in already, and the gap between +2 and +2 with percentage reduced prices is massive, absolutely massive. The thing in the middle would be getting coins per room. And again, it will add a lot of consistency to your run. It'll make it a lot more likely that you're able to actually buy out the shop when you need to be able to buy it, or more importantly, not having to skip Silver Tongues, because anytime you see Silver Tongue and you can't buy it, that is the absolute worst feeling in the world. Number 4, what's the priority for upgrading your character in Sanctum, right? If you're upgrading your character itself, how are you prioritizing? And my number 1 is always damage, of course. You straight up, I genuinely believe that Sanctum has a real damage check, and it is mostly just due to the fact that, much like everything, mechanics of the game become notably easier when you have damage, right? I've seen a number of, and I'll talk about this in a later video maybe, about characters that struggle in mapping because they can't kill monsters, or, if you're doing bosses get a lot easier when you only see, Maven's memory game once at the end of the fight versus 4 times. You only see the ball phase in Exarch twice instead of 5 times, right? The more you see these powerful, dangerous mechanics, the harder things become. No different in Sanctum. Damage is always the priority. Then, once you have enough damage, you need to figure out for yourself what enough damage looks like. It is making sure you don't lose runs, in speed. The number 1 multiplier on your currency per hour in Sanctum is not damage, it is speed. You need your character to be able to blitz these rooms. It's why I make gem space in my Hexblast character for lightning warp setups, or even a friend of mine who played it a league or 2 ago, he was doing insanity gloves, like the % more cast speed mod on his gloves on a mine character, because the speed was the most important thing at that point. And so as you start to make those types of decisions, that's where your priority starts to land. And then, other quality of life things, like we talk about damage, I want to emphasize that you want non-conditional damage when possible. A really good example of a meaningful upgrade for your character in Sanctum that falls into this category that you might not think about is the balance of terror if you're playing a Hexblast character, in the sense that Wither is usually tied to the Wither totem at first, which is very effective. It gets the 15 stacks of Wither on the boss target, but are you really going to put down the Wither totem on every guard pack you see? And the answer is yes, early on, but that slows you down. No longer having to place Wither totem will make you faster. We see where I'm going with? We have the same effective damage on that target, but we're just faster about getting to it. And that's what really matters. It's also why things like Relocations and Patience are so strong in Sanctum, because you no longer need the ramp time on your charges. They just show up. Another example of an item like this is actually like a replica Pharaoh's or regular Pharaoh's Fur type of setup. Again, just removing ramp times on your character, so that way you also delete bosses faster. See where I'm going? See where I'm going with this? That would be where I'd start to put my priorities. 5, I think the most important one, honestly, but it's just, I wanted to cover it last because it's the one that has the least player agency in the matter, which is when do you start seeing divines? Always. It's been confirmed to me multiple times that you can actually see divines in the Sanctum at any eye level of Sanctum, provided that you are in area level, or not in area level, in the 3rd or 4th floor of the run. No matter what area item level of Sanctum you run, it is divines 3rd and 4th floor. Which I will roll into a second and more important question is that what is the point of item level, the importance of the item level of a Sanctum? 1, relics. The relics you drop are determined by item level of the target, specifically being, since the drop of Original Sin, for example, is an I-85 drop always, you have to kill an I-level 83 Lycia in order to drop it. The best modifiers on magic relics also drop at I-85. Which means off of the guards, rares, mini bosses, and bosses throughout the run, including Lycia at I-83. Additionally, all of the currency rewards that you get that aren't really divines and whatnot scale with eye level. So, you know, divines, annuls, exalts, sacred orbs, etc. Those are always 1 at end of floor, 2 of end of run. But when you start thinking about the chaos pickups you get, chaos pickups get bigger as you go up. I believe they went up roughly according with map tier numbers. That's roughly how my understanding is. So about like 78 plus is when you start to see the most amount of chaos, glass blowers, sexes back in the day. I don't know why I thought of that immediately. It's just, you know, look, man, I used to live for sextants in the Sanctum. Okay. But like you start to see these currencies that you want to trade, that you like bubblegum, that cover costs pretty easily, or you need, if you're an SSF, you need to fill out your stuff. That's where you start to see those go up 78 plus. And that's another important level of item level. I have one last thing for you, which is, you know, how do you get started in this if you aren't in trade, right? Because if you're in trade, you can kind of just bankroll your original relic, your initial relics, and get yourself started that way. And my quick tips version of getting started in SSF is to just run whatever relics you have, prioritizing coins. You want to prioritize coins and merchant choices when possible. And you're looking to really just lean into a coin heavy playstyle, because again, the first crest strategy that I mentioned towards the end of my large guide video is the best way to get yourself more relics so that you can start to roll your relics forward into better and better rolls. Coins are the best way to do that, simply because the quant of relics really only has that much of a noticeable effect on Lycia. Technically, it does affect everything in the area, but they don't drop relics nearly as much as just buying out the merchant and then buying, relics is right, buying relics from her. Like the merchant, Divinia, right? Like you want to buy out the merchant, and that's where you really want to lean your money towards in order to get more relics. Beyond that, I also want to take a moment to note that in starting up scenarios, which I will have a full video covering this at some point, that combat helper relics are also perfectly viable in Sanctum. They're just not optimal, and that's why you don't see them in optimized strategy recommendations. For example, having a papyrus relic with monsters take 12% increased damage, you stack 4 of those, that's effectively 48% shock on any target you hit. That means a lot in terms of your actual damage. And it's actually even better because it's not one of the, it's really, really good for you if you actually need damage. Or If you're struggling with runs, do not be ashamed of using inspiration at start of run, inspiration at start of floor, inspiration at end of out on getting affliction, resolve at the end of the room, right? Maximum resolve on hitting a fountain. These are all like options to make your run stronger if you are feeling uncomfortable still with the Sanctum. All right, that's those questions. There's obviously more questions that I got a lot of questions. Again, thank you guys so much for supporting all of this, but I just wanted to cover a couple of the really important ones, or the ones that I feel like I've answered quite a few times, just in a place that can be consolidated to give you guys more information about how to run the Sanctum. I also think I'll have a couple more videos about the Sanctum coming, you know, talking about builds in there or other decision making and how that spills into really just how I approach the game as a whole, all of that stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, in the description, there's a Twitch, there's a Discord. If you want to connect with me outside of on here, I stream sometimes at nights. The schedule is still being worked out just due to my kind of a sliding working schedule, but I am around in Discord to answer questions, you know, at some frequency. Don't expect an immediate response when you come in there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys for supporting, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.